Okay, boomers and bullet aficionados of all ages, let's talk about the most obvious item you need for bullet journaling, and that's the journal itself. Choosing the right journal would seem pretty easy. Just get a journal and start. But there's so many variations that making that decision suddenly gets rather complex. A quick search on Amazon will literally bring up hundreds of options for bullet journals. Picking that journal, the color, the patterns, all of that gets to be rather excited, but let's give you some information to work with. First of all, you're going to want to look at the size. The standard journals are probably this size. This is 5.5 by 8. That's half a sheet of regular paper. If you open it up, you get a full page layout there that you can use however you wish. So you can get them smaller, you can get them larger. So it's going to depend upon what's going to work best for you, but this is the standard size. The next thing to look at is what kind of paper. First of all, you want to make sure that the label says acid-free. There's a lot of information on these labels, and you'll find it in the description when you go to buy these. So you want it acid-free so that you can preserve your memories into the future. The next thing you want to do is check the weight of the paper. Paper is measured by the ream, which is 500 sheets. And the weight of 500 sheets is what they call the weight. So if you take 500 sheets of paper, you weigh it on a scale, it will come out to be a certain weight. The thicker the paper, the heavier it's going to weigh. If you're just planning on writing in your journal, ballpoint pens, pencils, you don't need real heavy weight. Around a 70-pound or 100 GSM, most are marked one way or the other or both, and that'll get you around 160 pages in your notebook, which is a pretty good number and will last you a long time. Sketchbooks tend to be a little bit heavier paper. They're expecting you to use a little bit more in the way of colored pencils, maybe some watercolors, felt tip pens, the colors, more effort, erasing things more often. Sketchbooks tend to run around 110 pound or 165 GSM, and you get around 100 pages to one of those books. And then you can get into watercolor paper. It's very heavy. It's twice the size of the first one. It runs around 200 GSM or 135 pounds. And it's normally what a serious watercolor artist is going to use, because that thicker paper doesn't wrinkle up and curl when it gets wet or damp. It only gives you about 70 to 80 pages though, so be aware of that aspect of it. The heavier the weight, the fewer pages you're going to have. So usually you'll find it on the label of whatever type you've got. I've got 3 different ones here. Here's a paperage. This is a moleskin in the watercolor album. This is the sketchbook moleskin. I have a ash and fur journal here. This one's lined. This one is blank. This one is blank. This one has the grills on it. And then I don't even know what type my current journal is that I'm using here. And it's pretty straightforward as well. Most of them will have a pocket in the back where you can store odds and ends and little things, maybe some templates. So consider that if that's something you're interested in. The next thing to look at is, how is it bound? There's basically 2 kinds of binding, and the best way to think about this is if you go to the library and you get a bound book, it's bound in signatures. But if you get a paperback, it's got what they call a glue binding. And they literally have taken all the sheets of paper and they just put glue on the end of them to hold it together. The glue binding will not last as well as a bound binding. And if you're opening this thing a dozen times a day, you really want to have that signature bound paper in there. The next thing to consider is what marking pattern do you want on the pages? If you're the diary type person, you may want lined pages. Nice ruled lines going across all of the pages. If you are an artist, you want blank pages that give you a clean canvas to work with nothing in the way. Most bullet journal are like the grid pattern, a series of dots. And those dots help you align the paper and align your writing without being overly restrictive as to what you're doing. And that helps you open up your creativity. I like the dots for my bullet journal, and I use the blank pages for my sketchbook. So once you have all those, then you can decide on what color and pattern you want on the cover. Maybe you'll make your own cover. We'll go into that in a little later. And lastly, remember that you can change your journal whenever you want. Just because you started with a specific journal does not mean you have to stick with it for the whole year and be unhappy about it. Change it on whatever reason you want, just because you want something different. It's your birthday. Let's start a new year. Hey, it's the spring solstice. I'm ready to go away from this line and I want to go to the grid pattern. You are in control and you can make that change whenever you want. I hope I've given you some things to think about and that you appreciate my content. Please hit like and subscribe to my channel.